Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sales Development Podcast. I am joined today by Derek Osgood, founder, CEO of Ignition. How are you doing today, Derek?
Not too bad, David. Excited to jam on this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been so many new developments and trends in the sales technology industry, and especially around alignment. So I'm excited to dive in with you. How did you come up with the idea and start the company?
Yeah, so I mean, I actually have spent most of my career, as a product marketer and product manager, kind of, and the large chunk of that work has been figuring out how to build launch processes and go to market for new products and features internally, and how to get the information that's needed in that strategic development work that's done around those new launches to the teams that need that information in order to be able to talk to customers about it. So typically like sales, success, et cetera, kind of all the customer facing folks. And I think it's a big, hairy problem. The launch process has all sorts of sub problems within it around, getting the right insights to feed into the strategy. And then, getting that, just creating a repeatable process that, it effectively allows you to build a strategy quickly enough to be able to launch effectively. And then, the communication and alignment burden just becomes incredibly challenging. And, this is why, I think you see a lot of sales enablement platforms having popped up, is because, all of this content is created in that go-to-market process. But oftentimes, sales success, everybody else is kind of left in the dark on it. And, often it's not uncommon at all for when you're working on software products, for example, for sales teams to suddenly have a new feature or product show up in a demo and they've never even heard that the thing was coming. And, then they got to figure out how to sell it on the fly. And, it's just really suboptimal for everybody. So, basically I wanted to solve for that alignment problem. As a product marketer, there's not really a lot of tools built around product marketing specifically. And, the launch process has always just been hacked together in so many generalized tools that are not really built for it that, I felt like there needed to be something to exist here.
So you saw this happening, and then so what's an example that you've put in all this time and effort to build this new product or build this new feature, and what usually happens now?
Well, usually what happens is, I'm going to use a software company as an example. This is applicable, across a range of different industries, but usually what happens is, the thing gets built, the dev team and the product team spend a lot of time building it and, concepting it and designing it and actually, getting the thing shipped. It ships. And then about 2 days before it ships, the PM tells the product marketer, hey, we're launching this thing in 2 days. Can you figure out a launch for it? Product marketer doesn't have time to actually effectively plan anything or coordinate anything. So they'll maybe write one line of copy, throw it in an email and send that to customers. They'll completely forget to tell sales, support, everybody else who needs information around that launch that the thing is even coming. And then, like I mentioned, it'll show up in a demo, and then some poor salesperson or some poor support person has to suddenly try and jump around when customers are asking questions about it and try and figure out what the thing even is, much less how to talk about it and sell it effectively. So the coordination problem is huge, and it ends up being super broken. Our goal is really turn that into more of a process where there is a little bit more advanced planning and there is some more advanced communication and transparency across the org into what is being built, when is that stuff shipping, how do you talk about it? How do you sell it effectively? What assets are available to you in order to talk about it too?
And what would be a better case scenario? If you could wave a magic wand, because it does seem like a lot of the effort is dissipated. It's not focused in. And I've seen this. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. So what would be a better case scenario?
Yeah. So the best case scenario is, product and product marketing are kind of attached to the hip. And, really as soon as the product ends up on the roadmap and ends up getting concepted, product marketing is already starting on go-to-market planning for that. And so they're doing real research, talking to customers before the thing is actually even completely built, getting messaging feedback and forming a, real concerted positioning messaging strategy and developing a couple of assets. It doesn't have to be a lot of assets, but, they're at least developing, some lightweight collateral that they can share with the sales team can share with customers. They're developing, a couple of, not just like one customer email, but they actually have a multi-channel communication strategy in place for communicating to customers. And then as all that strategy and content is coming together, everybody across the org has visibility into what's going on with these launches. So there is like a centralized launch calendar that everybody in the company has transparency into, and they can see like, okay, what are the things that are important to the company that we're launching? So not just like, here's a big list of all the features, but like, here's a prioritized list of all the things that we're building and shipping in terms of how important those things are to customers, because then that allows you as a sales team to focus on what are the things that are actually really going to drive deals. And so everybody has visibility in that launch calendar. And then when the thing starts to materialize and starts to get close to launching, there's kind of a pulsing communication process from product and product marketing to sales, where they are sharing, kind of what is that positioning strategy? What's the messaging? What are the assets that have been developed? And all of that is going out on a fairly regular drumbeat outwards to the rest of the team. So they don't need to go like sift through a tool to go find that information. It's just dropping into their inbox. And then they know on launch day, hey, this thing just shipped. Time for me to go ping all my customers or all my prospects, because they're all going to care about this thing that they've been asking for a while. So, it's a much tighter coordinated process more proactive than what it is, oftentimes today.
It's interesting. So two things. One was the user interviews and getting that into the upfront process. Is that something that is part of your vision of how you see it before you even build something? Does anybody care about this?
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, like on the user research front, we do a lot of insights stuff at Ignition. Mm-hmm. So, both customer insights as well as competitive insights. So, basically like a good go-to-market process is very, very research informed. And so ideally what you're doing is you have a continuous competitive intelligence program in place. So you're always monitoring what's going on with competitors. What are they announcing? How has their messaging changed over time? What does their pricing look like? So, we've baked a lot of that like automation around competitive intelligence into Ignition. So anytime you're creating a new launch plan, you can go draw from those insights that you're always tracking and monitoring, because it's all just automated. And then on the customer research front, like, once the thing becomes a concept, you can start doing customer research, and you can start interviewing people. And so as soon as kind of like roughly what's getting built, you should be on calls with customers all through that like alpha beta period, and understanding like what pain points is that really going to solve for customers? How much do they care about it? What language are they using to explain the problems that they're dealing with, as well as like the ways that, they think that might solve those problems. So then your messaging is actually based on real customer insight, not just somebody's like internal gut check that, they are guessing. And, oftentimes like the thesis that product has for why something's going to solve a problem is not necessarily directly mapped to the way that customers think about that. So ideally you're doing those customer interviews all through that process. And then once you get closer to actually like turning it into really productizing it and get to the end of the commercialization process, there's a lot more quantitative research that you can do as well. So you can go and you can do pricing and packaging research to really like gauge true price sensitivity. You can do message testing research once you've developed those messages, and kind of like A/B those messages against each other and compare which ones are really like driving real purchase intent. And that it just ends up making for much, much tighter story once it actually starts having to get told by, the folks who are customer facing in the company.
You can bring it together. And so what if there's multiple, at a small company, there might just be like one launch going and various things. But what if you have a bigger company that has multiple launches and multiple teams and things like that?
I mean, this is true even at small companies. So like, the funny thing, like we talk about launches all the time, and people's brains oftentimes go to like the big tier one product launches, right? But the reality is like most companies are constantly launching things. Like even every week, you have feature updates going out weekly. You have larger features going out maybe like monthly. You have, those big tier one full-blown product launches that have like new prices associated with them going out quarterly. So, like oftentimes you do already have many launches happening in parallel. And like, especially once you start talking about bigger companies, like, we deal with some companies where they have 14 tier one launches all happening within the same month. And so when you have that going on, the portfolio management becomes incredibly hard. Like, this is where you need to like really break all those go-to-market plans down, have that central visibility into like what's happening across all these, because you need to have like, it becomes more and more important to have that central launch calendar that's easily filterable by like product line, by type of launch. So you can see exactly like what's getting built across this big swath of teams that are all kind of operating independently. And you also need to have the ability to extract that messaging. Like having a source of truth becomes super critical, because if you're just managing all this stuff in like a bunch of docs and it's floating around, nobody knows where to find that information. And like a sales team shouldn't be spending their time sifting through, 1,000 different go-to-market plan docs or messaging docs that have been created by marketing. Like, they should be focusing on selling. And so that information needs to be accessible to them in the places that they're already working, which is like their CRM, in their email, and it needs to be accessible to them, in ways that is easily searchable, where they can actually go and like pull that information out without having to, go figure out how whoever created the information is like tagging it or organizing it in some folder structure.
Yeah, and do you see that a lot? That I know a lot of companies have a sales enablement platform, and the bigger companies like they'll, so, but it's sitting out by itself. It's almost like no offense to any of those, but it's like a Google folder, with a bunch of stuff thrown in, and people have to go use it, and then they don't use it, and it sits there. And
so no offense. No offense.
Yeah, no offense.
no offense taken, because like like our goal, we like don't believe that sales enablement platforms really should exist. So like we don't characterize ourselves as a sales enablement platform, actually, because exactly what you described is the problem with them. They are basically just glorified folder structures that, they're the same as putting all that stuff in Google Drive. What you're relying on is you're relying on some person to copy and paste all the content that's created in the go-to-market process into that sales enablement tool. That you're relying on the way that person created the hierarchy of information in the sales enablement tool to map to the questions that your sales team is really asking, which very rarely are those two things the same. And this is why like you end up having oftentimes like a different place where sales enablement assets are managed from the place that the actual go-to-market assets are managed, because those go-to-market assets, they're created by a marketing team, and then the sales enablement team like has to kind of find some middle ground that's like kind of like how the marketing team thinks about it, but kind of like how the sales team thinks about it. So the sales team can actually get that information, because all these teams just don't speak the same language. So like this is where it's actually one of the coolest things that we have coming literally like within the next 2 weeks. Is we are actually taking, like, because we're the place that the product marketing team is kind of generating all of that, those original assets and strategic docs that are built out in this process. We're actually using some really cool application of generative AI, where what we're going to do, and this is where I think like, the future of sales enablement is going, is we are going to be able to take a contextualized version of what ChatGPT is doing that's all just based on your data, and will allow a salesperson to come into our platform. And, even though like it's ignore any kind of like structure or hierarchy that's built, they'll be able to come in and they'll be able to just ask a question. Hey, how do I talk about the payroll product to a CFO? And so we'll be able to ask, like, how do I talk about this product to a persona that I'm talking to right now? And what we'll do is we'll look across all of your persona data. We'll look across all of your go-to-market plans that have been created, and we'll spit out a messaging guide that's actually personalized to that specific conversation that salesperson is having, with links to all of the assets that are relevant to that persona, as well as a summary of like all the things that recently launched that are relevant to that persona. So this is where like I think the some of the AI stuff is going to make this process infinitely less painful, because salespeople can then ask the questions the way that they normally would to a person. And that's what ends up happening with sales enablement tools today, is like, it's too much of a pain in the butt for people to go sift through all that information. So they just go ask the product marketer. They just go ask the person who's like created the content, like, hey, what's the answer to this thing? Which is also equally inefficient. So, I think that's going to start just like getting surfaced automatically without you needing to do this rigmarole of like translating content between different teams multiple times.
Yeah, that is amazing. And so what would be like a day in the life of a salesperson, the way that it's structured right now? Do they get emails and Slack messages and things like that? How would they utilize it?
Yeah, so like in terms of the way that people are using it in like sales enablement tools today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, like the today version is basically like, salesperson is on a call, they're working in their CRM mostly, they decide they want an asset, they're like, hey, I want to like pricing one sheeter to go share with this person. Yeah. They go dig into whatever sales enablement tool they have. That might be, pushed into their CRM. So, in some cases, like some of these sales enablement tools, they actually have workspaces that you can build in Salesforce or HubSpot. Then they go like dig through that and they find the right folder and they find the right, file within that folder. They download it, they send it. The version that exists in Ignition today is like, yes, they're getting like Slack and email updates pushed to them. So it's like, hey, this thing just launched. Here's the full summary of all of the information that you need for this feature launch today to go talk to your customers, that has, all of the assets directly embedded in that Slack message or that email. The way that this is going to work tomorrow, which is kind of what I was just talking about with the AI stuff, is salesperson is just, in their CRM, they're on customer calls, and in Slack, they'll just be able to type, /ignition, and then ask a question. And it's just, like I said, ask, hey, like, I'm talking to a CFO about the payroll product. Like, what do I need to tell them? And you can ask that exact question, and then you're going to get all of that context with all the links to the assets pushed directly into that Slack conversation. So you don't need to like go jump through tools. You don't need to go sift through folders. You just ask questions as if you were asking a person.
That's amazing. That's the dream, right? And it seems like the prompts, the people struggle with generative AI is like, what should I ask it? Like, what's the best use of the tool? But if it's related to your product that you're selling and your personas and your ICP, then the prompts are a lot easier, because you just basically, instead of asking the product guy, you just ask the ignition, right?
Yeah, and you're also going to get more accurate information because you get a full picture. Like if you have multiple product teams, they're all working across one larger product. Oftentimes, you go ask one PM, you're going to get a different answer from if you go ask another PM, and you're not going to get a complete picture. This allows you to get the entire picture much faster, and also, like you were mentioning, you don't need to think about the prompts. You just ask the question as if you were asking a human.
That's so funny. I just, on a side note, like, do you ever wake up in the cold sweat in the middle of the night, just going launches? Like, is launches just your?
I've been doing that for 20 years. It's even before I started building things around this, I would have cold sweats around my launches.
Small launch, big launch, huge launch. Yeah. So that this was kind of built out of your necessity in some ways. Yeah, totally.
I've been drowning under this process for years, and both on the like receiving end of it and on the shipping end of it, and it's painful. It's excruciatingly painful. It's extremely expensive for companies. Like, you invest, many people don't like do the math in their head when they're thinking about what goes into a launch, but like, you have large development teams spending months building the thing. You have the whole marketing team kind of orienting around, building assets and like getting the thing across the finish line to actually announce it. You have like all the customer facing conversations that are happening around it. They're extremely expensive. And, and like a lot of the time, because of all this like painful coordination, it's just handled through a lot of meetings, which, those are expensive meetings. There are typically a lot of like execs involved, and every single one of those meetings costs thousands of dollars for the company. And these are also one of the things that like drive revenue. And, it's like sales teams are constantly looking for new excuses to go talk to a prospect that, may have started going cold, or is like just on the hump of like converting on a deal. And new features, new product updates, like those are gold in terms of getting those deals across the finish line. And there's some stats that like 10% of all corporate revenue is lost to like poor launch processes. And I think like my take is that it's probably actually even higher than that if you really break it down. So getting this stuff right is really critical.
Oh my gosh. And so it's not only saving money from not having all these extraneous meetings and everything, but it's making money, plus 10%, which is, both of those are hitting on the current, economic environment that we're in. Like you don't want waste in the system, and it drives efficiency through this process.
Yep. Yeah, totally. I mean, like we definitely view, solving this as it's both a time and money saver for companies, but it's also, a chance for them to really juice their revenue in meaningful ways.
Because it's what you're doing this anyways. If you're, and is it, do you see this only for software companies, or are there other applicable uses for it?
No, not at all. I mean, like we work with, I kind of use software as the example because just it's kind of like what I've been in most of my career. But we work with CPG companies, we work with entertainment companies, launching like games and movies and physical products. So it's really any company that's like launching things. Probably the only like categories of stuff that we don't really work with are like government and services, and like things where there's no actual like widget being launched.
Yeah, they don't do anything. So no, I'm just kidding. They need to launch some new stuff. Maybe you guys should work with them.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, all right. And so the company's been going for a while. And you how long have you been working on this?
Yeah, we've been at it for about 2 years now. So we just celebrated our second birthday in February.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Like 90% of companies, fold in the first 2 years. There's some crazy stat like that. So that's great. Okay.
Yeah, we're definitely still early, but I think the nice thing is we also have a pretty killer team, and so we've been able to build a lot more product than what a typical startup our size would size and stage would have done. So I think we've got a fairly mature product that solves for a lot of these problems, kind of all in one platform.
And do you drink your own champagne? Do you use it to launch products?
We absolutely do. Yeah, we've got all of our, like we did a product hunt launch a couple of months ago, and like all of our launch planning was done, right in Ignition. We actually use it for a lot of other things beyond just launch planning too, just so that we're, dog fooding daily. We have like all of our engineering task management we do in Ignition as well. So, stuff kind of outside of like what the traditional launch process would look like lives there too.
Oh, that's interesting. So not as much Asana and project management, tools that most people use. You just try to focus on different ways that you can use Ignition.
Yeah, like we were using a kind of engineering like project management tool called Linear before, and like it was a good tool, but we basically were just like, hey, we want to maximize the usage that we're using in the product, just so that, we can identify all the areas for improvement before they ever like reach customers. And so we kind of like made the decision to force ourselves into doing it. But yeah, we have full-blown project management as part of the product. It's kind of like a feature. We don't really call ourselves a project management tool, but you can kind of like work that process in here too.
Got it. Okay. And so what's next? So the generative AI, when is that coming? When is that launching?
Yeah. So it should be live at the end of April. We are very, very close. We're just testing it, internally right now. But that's probably the big piece. We're launching some cool new launch measurement tooling where we plug into your whole analytics stack, and we're giving you kind of pre and post launch impact reports where we can show you kind of real business incrementality that's driven by those launches. So, like before and after, how did kind of averages or slopes of lines change? So you can see kind of like what the real impact was, which is very hard for a lot of companies to measure. And then later in the year, I think the big areas that we're investing in just continue to be like more and more of this AI automation, finding ways to help generate strategy faster, adapt more in a more personal way to the characteristics of your specific launch. So, our templates, we have kind of dynamic templates that will make recommendations to optimize your launch based on the type and size and budget that you have for that launch. And so, we're continuing to flesh all of that stuff out and make it more and more automated. And then, I think longer term, a lot of what we're going to start pushing into is tooling around helping to actually communicate these launches externally. So right now, like most of what we're focused on is how do you like do all the internal enablement around these launches and make sure that all of your internal teams have what they need in order to be effective around it. But one other component of this is how do you then communicate all this stuff to customers? And so, we're going to continue building tools to help with pushing this information outwards to customers as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's amazing. We're working with a company that does PR, but it's a generation ahead of the current, PR solutions out there. So let me know if you ever need like a little partnership or something like that.
Yeah.
You can see how this could be automated into speaking to the outside world versus, just really focusing on the internal.
Yeah, totally. Like our goal is basically like help to manage the entire launch process end to end. So like all the way from something being a concept in somebody's head on a customer roadmap to actually shipping the thing and communicating it internally, externally, everywhere that needs to go.
That is amazing. I'm blown away. But, how do people get started? Like, do they have to? Is it product led, or do they have to speak to a sales rep? I don't know if anybody does that anymore. But
Yeah, we're a hybrid motion. So, like we have a full PLG freemium model where people can just go sign up at the website and, start using it for free. But then folks who do want to talk to us, directly and like need a little bit more handholding, maybe they're a bigger org with a little bit more complexity, or they want to import or customize templates. We'll also have sales conversations with those folks too.
Perfect. Okay. So, what's the website?
Yeah, it's haveignition.com.
Have Ignition. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that ignition.com is like
it's actually available. We just haven't bought it yet, but we kind of play on the whole launch concept with a lot of like kind of NASA-ish branding. So like once you sign up, it's we.haveignition.com. So
nice. And your background, right? I feel like we're launching. Well, Derek, this has been so interesting. I think it's a great solution. I can feel the pain from past lives in the corporate world, and I think your launch is going to be super successful. So, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Definitely, we'll be in touch.
All right, thanks a bunch.